She deleted my entire year's work in front of 23 coworkers, called it garbage. And 3 minutes later, I got a $500,000 job offer that destroyed her career. I always thought betrayal came from competitors or strangers, not from the person who used to compliment my calendar color coding. My name is Zelda Faywright, and 3 months ago, I stood in an open-plan office with 23 coworkers watching my supervisor delete an entire year of my work in real time. She hovered behind my desk like a vulture in heels, smirking in that way only corporate climbers do when they think they've won. "Let's clear out this clutter," she said, then clicked delete like she was erasing a typo. Not the invisible framework that held our company's client base together. A moment of silence. Then, my phone buzzed. "We've been following your work. Ready to talk. $500K offer on the table. Equity included." Yeah, that happened 30 seconds after she nuked my files. And that's when I knew her biggest act of cruelty had just handed me the perfect weapon for the most elegant revenge I could have imagined. But let me take you back, because like every great revenge story, this one didn't start with a single dramatic moment. It started 18 months earlier, with a job title that sounded more like office furniture than a real position. Client Relationship Coordinator. That was my role at Piton Analytics, a data-driven consulting firm where emotional connection went to die in a Google Sheet. The job description: maintain communication records, schedule follow-ups, track satisfaction metrics. In other words, smile, dial, and don't get too personal. What didn't they mention? The company was bleeding clients. The previous coordinator quit for months in, and my supervisor, Quinla Brexworth, didn't believe my job even needed to exist. She was the kind of manager who thought warmth was unprofessional, a woman who worships efficiency metrics the way some people pray. To her, human connection was inefficient, and my role, unnecessary overhead. I noticed something in the noise of routine reports and lifeless email templates. There was no soul in our client communication, just robotic exchanges. No birthdays remembered. No family mentions. No "how was your weekend?" Nothing. So I made a small change. Not for recognition. Not even on purpose. I just couldn't help myself. Vernon Hutchcraft, a long-term client, casually mentioned during a check-in call that his golden retriever had been diagnosed with hip dysplasia. I made a note. 2 weeks later, I asked how his pup was doing. His voice cracked. He told me everything. And from that day on, I was his go-to contact, not just in our department, but in the entire company. When Constance Farweather's company hit 15 years, I sent a short, thoughtful message celebrating her milestone. She was stunned. Most vendors didn't even remember her name, and I was asking about her dreams for the next 15 years. That single message, it led to an extra $12,000 in consultations. Our client retention rate rose 37% in 6 months. Clients were calling in asking for me by name. We were no longer just Piton Analytics. We were Zelda's team, Zelda's voice, Zelda's follow-up. But she didn't see relationship-building. She saw inefficiency. Why are your calls 45 minutes long? Why are you typing so many notes? You're not hitting hourly benchmarks. The tipping point came during our annual strategy meeting. Our CEO, Gideon Ashworth, mentioned that retention was at a record high. He praised the new client approach, even hinted at expanding it. Quinla's face, like she swallowed a stapler. That's when she made her move. She assigned me an internal audit. Hundreds of hours of documentation tracing every interaction I'd ever had with a client. It was punishment. Plain and simple. Death by bureaucracy. But here's what she didn't expect. I turned that audit into proof. 53 pages. Over $200,000 in trackable revenue. A blueprint for how treating people like people could transform a business. I was proud of that work. Until the morning she destroyed it. She called a department-wide meeting, told everyone we were reviewing client protocols, said my audit would serve as a case study. I thought, finally, she gets it. I was wrong. Instead, she pulled up my notes and used them as a warning. This is exactly what we don't do at Piton. Personal chit-chat, family updates, pet stories. This is unprofessional and inefficient. Then, in front of 23 people, she pressed delete. Gone. An entire year of relationship strategy. Erased. As the silence hung in the room like static, my phone buzzed. It was Marlowe Partners, a fast-growing consulting firm started by 3 ex-Petron execs. "We've been watching from the outside, and we just saw the moment you became available. The offer: $500,000 salary, equity, and full control of client strategy. But the money wasn't the sweetest part. They told me something that made everything click. You can't steal client files, but you don't have to. Relationships live in people, not in folders. They were right, Quinla had deleted data, not trust, and she was about to find out that some things can't be erased. Do you have any questions about our new client communication protocols? That's what Quinla Brexworth asked me as I walked back into the conference room, her voice smug, her pointer hovering over a freshly wiped screen where 53 pages of my work used to live. 23. People sat there in silence. Some are still, stunned, some are visibly uncomfortable. A few not meeting my eyes at all. I stood in the doorway for a full second, then I took a breath and said, "Actually, I have something to announce." Let's rewind 30 minutes. When Marlowe Partners called me just after Quinla deleted my audit, their pitch wasn't desperate, it was decisive. "We've been tracking your work for months. Quinn just gave us the perfect reason to act now." They laid it all out. $500,000 salary equity in a fast-growing firm, complete creative freedom team that values relationship building, and here's the key line: "We don't want your files. We want your reputation." That hit different, because that's exactly what Quinn never understood. She thought value lived in spreadsheets. She never realized that what I had built lived in people's trust. Quinla straightened up, clearly expecting compliance, maybe a sheepish nod. Instead, I calmly pulled out my phone and set it on the table. "I'm resigning from Piton Analytics, effective immediately." You could have heard a paperclip hit the carpet. She blinked. Twice. "You can't just quit. Not in the middle of a department meeting." I locked eyes with her, steady, controlled. "My contract allows immediate resignation in the case of hostile workplace conduct or public humiliation. I believe deleting my work in front of 23 people qualifies." Even Gideon Ashworth, the CEO, stood up in the back corner. "Let's take this discussion offline," he offered quickly, clearly sensing the shift in atmosphere. But I wasn't going to slink away quietly. Quinla humiliated me publicly, so she could watch the fallout publicly too. There's no discussion needed. "I've accepted an offer from Marlowe Partners as Director of Client Relations." Gasps. Actual gasps. Because, if you knew anything about the consulting world, you knew Marlowe was on the rise. And now, I was their newest weapon. I gathered my notepad, my pen, and my water bottle. That's all I had left. Since the rest of my work was now vaporized, but as I walked toward the exit, I felt eyes following me, not just in shock. Some are in awe, some calculating. Maybe they were realizing they had bet on the wrong side of the company. "Culture war. You're making a huge mistake," she shouted after me. "Marlowe is a risky startup. You're giving up stability for a fantasy." I stopped at the door, turned slowly. "We'll see which one of us built something real." And I walked out, head high. The office wasn't fancy. Not yet, no exposed brick walls or overpriced espresso machines. But the team, they were hungry, sharp, genuinely excited about building something that treated clients like people, not numbers, and most importantly, they let me lead. I designed the relationship strategy from scratch. The same approach Quinla called inefficient. It was now the centerpiece of a brand new business model. It came 3 days later. Vernon Hutchcraft, Golden Retriever dad and manufacturing company CEO. He found my new number somehow. Didn't even wait for me to call him. "Zelda, I heard you moved. Just wanted to say congrats. And maybe ask what your new firm offers." We talked for an hour. By the end of it, he scheduled a consultation to move his entire account to Marlowe. Constance Farweather called that same afternoon. Tempest Livingwell left a voicemail the next morning. Roderick Yates emailed to say he missed our chats about vintage mystery books. And me, I never made a single sales call. These people weren't chasing Piton Analytics. They were following the only person who ever made them feel heard. Quinla was unraveling. I know because people started damning me, whispers from inside. "She's scrambling to rewrite the client's scripts. Clients aren't picking up her calls." Constance flat out told her she was switching firms. "Quinla blamed you in a leadership meeting." That last one. I found it hilarious because the only person who convinced our clients to leave was Quinla herself. She burned the bridge. I just walked across it and opened a better door on the other side. 3 weeks had passed since I walked out of Piton Analytics. No dramatic fireworks. No lawsuits. No smear campaigns. Just a steady, quiet exodus of clients who remembered how I made them feel, and a growing panic inside the walls I used to work in. You see, Quinla Brexworth had made one critical error. She thought she could replace connection with process. She thought a folder of efficiency protocols could stand in for a human voice saying, "How's your daughter settling into college? Did your dog's surgery go well? Are you still planning that spring product launch?" What she didn't realize was, those inefficient conversations weren't distractions. They were the glue. And now that glue was gone, Vernon Hutchcraft was the first to act. He didn't just schedule a consultation with Marlowe Partners, he transitioned his entire account and referred to others in his manufacturing network. That one move alone redirected $80,000 in annual revenue. When Pettin's retention coordinator called to ask why, Vernon kept it simple. "I don't trust people who forget my name the moment the invoice is sent." By the end of week 2, we had 6 clients moved over, 3 consultations booked over $2 for OK, and client transitions underway, and not one of them needed a sales pitch. They didn't ask for presentations or proposals. They just wanted to know if I was available. They followed the relationship, not the brand. Inside Piton, things were starting to unravel. People I hadn't spoken to in weeks were texting me off the record. "Quinla is trying to rewrite the outreach scripts again. She just blamed you in front of the leadership team. Gideon's asking where the loyalty went. Clients keep saying they feel ... ignored." That last one, that's the dagger. Because no business survives when clients feel invisible. I'll never forget her tone. "Zelda, I've worked with a dozen consulting firms. You're the only person who ever remembered my company's anniversary." She told me that after I left. She tried working with Piton's new contact. It lasted exactly 1 call. I asked a question about our history, and she told me it wasn't in the system. I knew then it was over. She didn't just move her account. She brought 2 suppliers with her. And just like that, Piton lost another $45,000 a year. Brick, the vintage bookstore chain owner who used to call me directly, had stayed quiet the longest. But when he finally reached out, he was furious. "Zelda, I told Quinla I was following you to Marlowe. And she argued with me, told me I was being emotional. Can you believe that?" Yes, I could believe it. Quinla never understood that relationships drive decisions. Even in business, she said my choice wasn't data-driven. Like I needed permission to trust someone. Every time Quinla opened her mouth to defend her systems, she pushed another client away. She didn't just misunderstand relationships, she actively disrespected it. And clients felt that, deeply. Because when people trust you with their money, their time, their goals, they remember who made them feel seen, and they remember who did in single quotes. By the end of the first month, 14 clients had either signed on or entered final stage discussions. That's over 60% of Piton's annual revenue. Quietly walking out the door, our team at Marlowe Partners, we didn't gloat, we didn't post shade on LinkedIn, we just kept answering calls, listening, helping, the same way I always had, only now, I was doing it with autonomy, respect, and a $500,000 paycheck. Week 5. A friend from HR texted me in the middle of the day. "Emergency board meeting. Quinn's getting grilled. They want answers about the retention collapse." Turns out, she had been trying to frame my departure as sabotage, claiming I'd poached clients, violated ethics, manipulated relationships, but the timeline didn't support her narrative. Clients hadn't left the day I walked out. They left after trying to stay, and realizing Pettin didn't care who they were anymore. The board saw the pattern. The truth was clear. I left because no one remembered my name. I stayed for Zelda, not for Piton. I was treated like a file, not a person. The real damage wasn't just financial, it was philosophical. Piton didn't just lose clients, it lost trust, and that's not something you can rebuild with a template. I never badmouthed Pettin, never criticized Quinn publicly, never told clients to switch. They came on their own, because once someone experiences being treated like they matter, it's hard to go back to being a number. The CEO of Piton Analytics. I stared at the caller ID for a moment, then picked up. Calmly, Zelda Faywright speaking. His voice was polite, too polite, a little too smooth. "Zelda, I'd like to discuss a potential partnership opportunity." I didn't say anything at first, because I already knew Piton Analytics was in freefall. I had been hearing the whispers for weeks. Major clients are gone. Revenue projections were slashed in half. Senior staff jumping ship, Quinla Brexworth, underperformance review. And now the company that had deleted my life's work was asking for help. We're exploring strategic restructuring, Gideon said. There's an opportunity for Marlowe Partners to acquire remaining client accounts and potentially absorb some of our staff. Translation: they were dying, and they knew we were the only ones who could salvage the wreckage. I waited a beat, then replied, I'm listening. Of course, she wasn't, because she was no longer with the company. I found that out later, through mutual connections and LinkedIn updates. Her final weeks at Peloton were spent trying to convince clients to stay by doubling down on the same robotic, impersonal tactics that drove them away in the first place. She never adapted, never changed. She just watched her numbers collapse and couldn't understand why. Her role was eliminated during the merger process, quietly, unceremoniously. No press release, no farewell email. She was simply gone. Toward the end of our call, Gideon made an unexpected pivot. We're also prepared to make a direct offer to bring you back. He didn't stutter, didn't pause. We'll double your previous salary. We'll grant you complete control over client relations. No oversight. No interference. Just results. I could practically hear the boardroom in his voice, the desperation to fix a problem they now understood. Too late. I thought about it for a second, then smiled. I appreciate the offer, Gideon, but I'm happy where I am. Marlowe Partners believed in relationship-driven consulting before it was popular, before it became urgent. And we're building something here that doesn't just fix broken systems, it prevents them. He was quiet for a moment. Then, finally, said, understood. Good luck, Zelda. I hung up. No gloating, no bitterness, just closure. I was promoted to senior partner at Marlowe Partners. We were now expanding into 3 new markets. Onboarding teams, trained specifically in personal client relationship strategies, the very thing Quinn once labeled garbage. The clients who followed me from Peloton, they became our foundation, our proof of concept. Their loyalty became our growth engine. Their referrals, exponential. What I built from birthday notes, follow-up calls, and sincere attention, became a multi-million-dollar framework. Sold. Merged with a competitor, rebranded into something cold, corporate, and faceless. Almost no trace of what it once was, except in the memories of people like me, who tried to make it better, and were punished. For it, they had a chance. They had me. But they chose arrogance over evolution, and paid for it. The last I heard, she was struggling to land a comparable role. Her reputation was tethered to a client. Retention, disaster. Most hiring managers saw the numbers and walked away. A few reached out to me quietly, asking for character references. I declined to comment. Because my story wasn't about her anymore, it was about what happens when you quietly do the right thing long enough, until the people who dismissed you end up buried beneath the weight of their own bad decisions. Zelda Faywright never plotted a takedown. She never fought dirty. She never needed to. The truth did all that work. Clients left because they wanted more than speed and automation. They wanted a connection. And when Peloton deleted that connection, they deleted their future. The most elegant revenge. Letting people destroy themselves while you rise without them. If you've ever been told that the soft skills don't matter, remember Zelda. If you've ever had your work dismissed by someone who didn't understand its value, remember this. The people who dismiss you today may one day beg for what you built, after it's too late.